Class is in session. Welcome to Unlearn 16. Class is in session. Guys, today I have probably one of the most interesting, amazing, intelligent gentlemen that I have had the honor of speaking with. Sorry, guys. I'm just saying this because we had this great conversation that I didn't tape, heaven help me. But he is this amazing gentleman. His name is Abe Gurko. I'm going to give him a chance to give you a vibe of who he is, and then we're going right into discussion. And I promise you, it'll be an interesting one. How you doing today, Abe?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here. I'm just gonna try to be a sense of who I am to the people that watch your or listen to your podcast. This is my traditional
Your
bio
traditional bio. This is your press release. Give it to us.
about Abe. When
Ab-
Abe packed his bags and moved to New York from New York City to Hollywood, he wasn't leaving a career in the fashion industry to chase the usual dream of becoming a movie star. I wanted to be a mechanic to the machine called celebrity. I wanted to know how it worked. Over the next few years, he developed skills as a behind the scenes creative force by working with arguably the coolest woman in Hollywood, Carrie Fisher. There, he acquired an intimate knowledge of how the entertainment industry really works. I was like Alice careening through the looking glass, Mad Hatter and all. And that is me.
I like it. And you know what's funny? I had no idea about any of that. We talked for how long, and we were so specifically focused.
Yeah.
I had no idea why you went to Hollywood. I had no idea you were from New York in fashion. I had no idea you're doing all that behind the scenes stuff because what connected you and I outside of we're both on TikTok, and I'll put all your information, in the description where people can find you.
Right.
I think we both meet on social justice issues, and where you reached out and I reached back out and had this conversation was my recent TikTok about the art project I did in my world religions class surrounding the SS St. Louis, about the Jewish refugee ship that was turned away from Canada and the United States. And we had this amazing conversation because you have created this incredible piece for HBO. That when is that airing, by the way?
We haven't finished filming, so it's
You don't have
just
a
a
release.
matter of
Okay, so
only. Yeah,
you're in
it's
the
just.
midst of creating this episode that speaks
Yeah.
to your family lineage. Do you want to just give a snippet of that?
Well, I just want to clarify that the piece that I sent you is a documentary that's in process.
Right.
My uncle, who was killed in a concentration camp, but he was a notable musician, and he wrote a song of resistance to the Nazis. And when he was murdered hours before the liberation, the song was lost for 75 years. It was recently discovered, kind of serendipitously. The same week, the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville, and the Holocaust Museum, who had found this piece of music, contacted our family and said, "Hey, we found this piece of music. It's attributed to your uncle, and I wanted to take this piece of music that was written as a resistance song to the Nazis and make it a current, relevant anthem for social justice today." So I've been on this journey since like 2000, for the past couple of years.
Right.
Sadly, we got shut down by COVID because everything was shut down then. But fortuitously, I found TikTok and I used the message "Won't Be Silent," which is the name of the song, um, to build an audience and to get my message out. That what better way to say "I won't be silent" than by voting, which is what was happening when we were all stuck in lockdown. And I
Right.
worked with used the piece of music to do public service announcement with Voting Rights Alliance, which is an organization in DC, and we were registering young people to vote. And look, am I taking credit for getting that orange gross baboon out of the White House?
I think
Yes.
you should. Yes. Yes, you are.
Thanks, Uncle Wolf. Anyway,
Yes, I am. Look, I
but
had no. Sorry, go ahead. Yep.
but other than that, I have been an activist since. I mean, I stopped my grade school from coming into school when the hippies were marching against the war on Washington and the war, the the moratorium to end the war in Vietnam in 1970, I was like blocking, the sixth grade, ninth graders, but we were seventh graders from entering the school because my sister was doing it in DC. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. And so I've been an activist, I guess, when you feel like you're other, which
Yeah.
being Jewish and being raised in a town of anti Semites, which is lots of fun. And then also, being fat, you feel like other and people make fun of you. And then coming out, it's like I'm most comfortable in other. And
Hmm.
that's why I get along with whoever and I can be me exactly who I am because I don't have barriers. I'm like, you know what I mean? So I think that's actually it's the thing that's which doesn't kill you, just constantly makes you stronger. And
Hmm.
whether it's being hated or losing a family member where you kind of try to come to terms with loss of family members, where that at the end it becomes, well, that was my teaching moment. What am I learning? So I know I kind of just jumped around, but I just think it's
No,
all feeling. Yeah, I just feel like the thing that I think we connected on so intensely was something that was so meaningful to you, that was so kind of unexpected, because usually people that are doing Holocaust related education are either part of an organization or a temple or an organization that's funded by Jews and Jews and Jews. And here you are, one of the people that I just adore. And I've DM'd you over the years just how groovy I think you are anyway. You know what I mean? So I felt comfortable to say, oh my God, I can't believe what you're doing. What can I do? And Holocaust or Remembrance Week coming up next week. So, it was just a joy to see your passion, and knowing that students that are in high school crave wanting to be part of storytelling. And it's emotional for me because I am emotionally connected to telling my uncle's story and actually my mother's story and my father's story, but because my whole family survived the Holocaust except my
sure.
uncle, he was killed. But
Right.
I'll be damned if I'll let him be just one of the 6 million anonymous Jews. And the thing
Hmm.
about my project is I am not doing a Holocaust film.
Hmm.
I am doing something that, because this little piece of music, that it was exhumed from the ashes of the Holocaust, is the opportunity for us to tell stories of what we are here together. It's
Hmm.
whether it's the concentration camp, the cotton fields, or the inner city streets. We have Our families have stories to tell, and if you're alive now, tell it, because if they're no longer here, that's a responsibility.
And I think that is what connects us. I mean, everybody can tell, and this is what makes education, in my opinion, phew, just essential. It's not just telling the story. It's not just the what. It's not just the what. I think we get trapped a lot in the what. When did it happen? How many people died? How did they get like the what, right? And we've gotten really good in education about memorizing the what. But if you're intelligent, or if at all you're aware of the way history and people work, it's never the what, it's the why.
Bingo.
It's the why. And to talk about the why means, a, it's subjective because everybody's why is very different. That's why we need every single person at the table describing it. And then the why matters because that's the only way you're ever going to get at people. Let's say, because as you're telling this and you're saying, you connect to anyone who is othered. Well, let's be honest, the vast majority of this planet is othered in some way. And if we can figure out how to connect to that in their heart, in their soul, I don't care if you live in Tennessee, I don't care if you live in Zimbabwe, I don't care. That aspect, we can connect to that. We can, sort of gain some sort of, uh, you know, um, solidarity surrounding that. And that is powerful. And then we get to the most important part, which is how do we maintain accountability? How do we have change? How does what happened matter today other than feeling bad that it happened?
Oh,
That's
definitely. I mean,
power.
the why is the big thing. I don't know. I just want to say, is this going to be on video or just on?
Be on video. Yeah, yeah, it'll be on video. It'll
Stream
look
it
like it's not. Yeah, it'll
over.
look like it's not had a high resolution, but when it
Oh,
processes, it is. Yeah, so you don't need
okay.
to worry.
I just in my.
Abe, would I let you look bad on TV? Do
No, no,
you
no.
what?
You're just you're so beautiful. I didn't want it to be pixelated. Uh,
No,
no, but I
it'll turn.
just want to say the buzzword in Hollywood now is why. Like, why
Mhm.
do you want to do this project?
Why?
If you can't answer the why, um, I just that's that you're not getting a deal. But I will
Yeah.
say this, just to finish up about so the Wolf Project is called working title is Wolf Story. That's about my
Mhm.
uncle. While we were in lockdown, not only was I like looking for what to do, but I ended up doing a deep dive research on the history of protest music because this little piece of music was written and protest. And the only way you could protest if you were in a concentration camp was to keep your dignity and keep your strength and keep your stay silent and don't let them take your dignity. But I did a deep dive into the history of protest music, and I was able to put together a docu-series which is called Won't Be Silent, where each episode is a different reason why people have written protest music over the years. And it spans the 20th century for the most part. And
Amazing.
there's so much talent and there's so much great music that you wouldn't even know is attributed to. Like in the 80s, the rock people, they were totally environmentalists. And so we put together a series. So I was able to get the pilot sold, which we just kind of solidified,
Right.
and that starts production now. And we're doing the women of protest music because of
Amazing.
what just happened with Roe v. Wade. Did I tell you about that the other
You
day?
did. Yeah, you
Oh,
told me a bit about it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So that's exciting. And Selena Gomez and Stacy Abrams are my co-producers. So I
What a
feel
like
like
if only you
don't
had started Abe, if only you had a few people to back your project that had any sort of influence whatsoever.
it's
Listen,
just it's
I will
tenacity.
fly anywhere. I'm telling you right now, when that one starts, you tell me, I will fly anywhere to shake Stacey Abrams' hand. Anywhere you are, I will come there. Not that Selena's not beautiful and amazing and everything, but Stacey Abrams,
Yeah,
as a sign of all of those things you just spoke about, is one of the most, if not the most incredible women of this decade.
yeah. I mean, she's awesome. And I was on a non-disclosure agreement for the whole past year and couldn't talk about the whole thing until after the election. So I couldn't, you know what I mean? So anyway, um, not that I believe me, I'd much rather have her be the Georgia governor than my co-producer. But if life is going to throw
You
lemons, here's some lemonade, girl.
know what? Here's something interesting because a lot of people ask me why I don't go into politics. And I wonder sometimes, I wonder if Stacey Abrams in this role, in the roles that will come, different roles, like I don't mean just obviously movie roles, but in the opportunities she will have to speak and change the world, I wonder sometimes if it's not this tiny little blessing because there will be no constraints, there will be no compromise, there will be no, I got to do this so I can get this, which is the world of politics. She's going to be able to speak her truth, no holds barred. And I wonder if she will be able to do without being, limited, if she will be able to do even more amazing things. Because I think people say, why don't I join? I'm like, whose table am I sitting at?
Right, right.
Who, like up here we have three major parties, but you have to sit at a table, right? And once you sit at that table, you have to understand that you speak for the table, and once you speak for the table, there's compromise at the table, and I'm not very good at that, Abe. I'm not.
I can tell. You
I'm
want
not
to know
very
something? But it ties into what I said a few minutes ago, which is that life lessons happen based on good and bad.
good.
So
Yeah.
if it didn't happen that she's the governor, it's
Hmm.
because whatever she's going to do next, and I'm not even talking about my project, I'm just saying it's going to allow her to free up. to do what her mission on Earth is, which, well,
Hmm.
I'm sure will tie into what she's been doing, which is
Sure.
rallying people and engaging
Yes.
people. And, I whatever. I just, the fact that we were able to sign that on was like
It's
unbelievable.
amazing. You said
So,
something. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, I just think in the same way she teaches young people and people of color to know that their voice matters, which is what she'd been doing for the 10 years down in Georgia, so that we could at least have the two senators as a
Yeah.
byproduct of her hard work.
Right.
That's nothing to sneeze at.
No,
That's a
it's not.
great thing.
Yeah. You said something earlier that just caught my. Last night, I went to a production of Rent, which is
Oh, right.
my. I love Rent so much, and I cry at Rent all the time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who does it. I'm usually in tears at some point. And the part that makes me that you just said, and the part that ties everybody is that there's a song, and one of the lyrics goes, "Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care?" And first of all, I could cry right now, but I'm going to try not to. Will I lose my dignity? I think about that as I was watching it last night, realizing that play was written in the you know what I mean, a long time ago, and not all of those issues are still reticent today. But will I lose my dignity? And I think of everybody today, and I think of all of the battles, and what's at the fundamental underpinning of all of it: human dignity. And which humans we are willing to dispose of, which humans we are willing to dehumanize, which humans we are willing to rip that from to ensure they are less. And when I sit and I try to decide, because when there's a lot of people who will say, well, Joanna, do you hate all Republicans or do you hate all conservatives? I said, absolutely not, but I need to know what your goal is. If your goal is human dignity, we're just agreeing on how to get there. If
Right.
your goal is the human spirit and love and perseverance and empathy, I'm with you. I'm with you. If your goal is how to turn a country into an economic corporation, I can't stand with you anymore, because you are going to forgo what I have just said. You have to. It's in the nature of capitalism, whether you love it or hate it. I don't care. You have to admit it's not about human dignity, it's
Right.
about amassing money. So when I think about human dignity and I think about those words in that song as they were pertaining obviously to men and women with HIV at the time, I think the way that we push people aside and trample upon them in order to gain something, which goes back to the Holocaust and Hitler. A lot of people talk about Hitler being this, incredible anti-Semite. Obviously he was, but that wasn't his main thrust was, what am I going to get? When I marginalize this group, when I imprison them, when I ghettoize them, when I take everything they have, that's not just about intolerance. That was about, how do I then build myself up? It's always about that. And that's why this notion of scapegoating is so horrifically damaging. Because if I can rile people up and say it's their fault, and depends what country you're in, they mean something different, right? You build
Mhm.
animosity and anger and resentment, and then eventually there's nowhere for that to go but violence.
Right.
And that's all about dignity. And that's all about, what are you trying to get from that, right?
Well, I'm going to make one correction to your statement when you said it is what we do. No, it's what they do. And you're not part of they, you know what I mean? Because philosophically, you're never
Hmm.
going to get on the same page with that. And yes, you don't want to think that you hate all Republicans and hate all conservatives and whatever. It's not a matter of whether you hate them or not, because hate is intrinsic in everyone. I mean, we just, the more sophisticated people don't let it move us and be our operating. It's not what motivates,
Drives. Right.
but but there's something innately extremely evil in what that is. It's
Yeah.
that evil that was the 30s and what was all about the Third Reich and what we as a country now innocently might be looking at and thinking, oh, well, we could loosely blame that on them. But if you think about Hungary in 1944, who said, oh, but they're never going to come and get us.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's that blinders on that we all probably wear because we live in a country that we've been lullabied into this sense of fabulousness because
Mhm.
of fashion and beauty and all the gimmicks of
Mhm.
social media that really have propelled. I mean, the best thing that happened again, which is why you and I are even having this conversation, is that TikTok was a platform that allowed people to have honest conversations about politics and we could
Mhm.
follow each other. I mean, TikTok initially, I don't think it's still that way anymore. I think that from 20 to 21, like though that beautiful year where everybody kind of congealed together was
Mhm.
what the internet was initially for. People
Yeah.
of like mind creating community, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why if you look at my YouTube channel, when I first started on TikTok, I immediately started following the people who I was following. I started interviewing, and I just wanted this place where
Mhm.
people can kind of feel like we're going to congeal and we're going to get rid of that gross baboon. You know what I mean? And, cumulatively, we have like 50 to 60 million followers. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so just that I just needed to correct the fact that it's
I see what
they,
you're saying.
they not we.
I constantly here's what's interesting. I constantly remember to include myself in the they. Here's why.
Hmm.
Because I'm still white and I'm still privileged to a certain level, and I've still lived 47 years without consistent wisdom. Not that I have full wisdom now. I'm just saying I remember, I like to take ownership and accountability, and I think it helps me connect with people who are still stuck in the mindset. I like to take ownership and accountability of where I grew up, how I grew up, the blinders that I used to wear very comfortably, didn't even know they were on my head, so that I can more, for the most part, it's not to say I never get angry, because sometimes I can't make TikToks in that kind of state. But for the most part, I can still try to figure out a connective point so I can have conversation. So, for example, when I was in high school, I was horribly homophobic. Awful.
Really?
I know. Well, because I grew up in the 90s. I wasn't gay in my whatever. I was, Abe. I
External
just
world.
right? It's not horribly homophobic, like I'd go seek out. Like, I never did anything, but I remember the jokes. I remember the language. I remember the vibe. Like, when you look at movies that were made in the late 80s, early 90s, the F word, and I don't mean the
Mhm.
FUC word, the F word was consistently used as the worst possible insult you could throw around. And it was used free in a classroom, free on the volleyball court, every single movie, right? I watched the old Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. I think if you had a drinking game with the F word in that movie, you'd be schnammered. That's what I grew up in. So I have to acknowledge that, because what made me aware, which a lot of people don't have, which is when I got shoved out of that bubble. I guess my own, because I came out, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm standing outside that bubble going, what the right? And then I
How
started
old were you
seeing
when you came out?
I was old. I was like 24. My dad had passed. I went to this is funny because out here we have schools that are more right wing, more left wing, right? I did my undergrad at a very right wing school. I wasn't really aware of it. It's just the one I chose. And then I did my grad school at a very left leaning school. And right away we went on strike. And right away we went on strike. So I'm walking the picket line, and everybody on this line was using the word partner. And so that in 2001 was just reminiscent of people who were gay at the time, right? They would use the word partner. Meanwhile, everybody, and I'm looking around going, is everybody gay that goes, everybody's using part. And I found out later, like, very few of them were actually gay or bisexual or whatever. but they were being respectful with their language. And all of a sudden, I started understanding, not, and this is so funny because a lot of people think, well, did you become gay? No, no, no. I started seeing it as a legitimate possibility of something I was missing that I never knew I didn't have.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I started talking to people, and all of a sudden, I went, "Holy shit! This is, you know." And then I met a girl who crushed me in two, which is pretty much how it
Yes,
all starts,
hence
isn't
they
it?
come to Jesus moment, but go
It
ahead.
was, yeah, it was something. Um, but you know, and so you come to that, and then you are pushed into a level of perspective that, Abe, I don't think many people are ever shoved into, you know, because I think about people, especially in the United States and in Canada too, that not only don't leave their state, they don't leave their city, they don't leave their town.
Right.
How are they ever supposed to think outside of that bubble? They're not bad people. I don't think they're hateful people. But how are they ever supposed to get and understand that perspective when I grew up in a town outside of Toronto and I still didn't get it until I was shoved out? Do you
Right.
understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, no,
So
I
my
agree. That's interesting. That I mean, but everybody's journey is unique to ultimately who they become and what they mean on Earth to be. You know what I mean? Like, I think not everyone is meant. May sound gross, but I don't think everyone is supposed to have this impact on Earth. I think
Mhm.
there's people who journey through and force themselves to find themselves. I mean, that's like it's not an easy path to take. Whether you're hurled into it and land and decide to accept it, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Yeah.
Acceptance then becomes a very important part of the strength. I mean, if you, let's say, just hypothetically speaking, had stayed not, if you went to a conservative post grad, you know what I mean, what kind of different teacher would you be? Like, it's
That
like,
would have been horrible.
and maybe you would have never done that assignment.
Probably not.
You know what I mean? So it's
I
almost
don't,
like, it's like that expression, some quickly, some slowly, when people have
yeah.
to, you know, and each one of our journeys. I mean, look, I'm like fucking on Medicare already. I'm finally reality that I want to do films and what, you know what I mean? And it's like I refuse to say it's over just because I'm over a certain age, but it's all of our journeys are unique. There's so many millions of people that are voting for blindly, whether it's Democrat or Republican, that
Mhm.
are just purposelessly existing
Mhm.
on the planet. I don't need to, and this is very self-serving in a way, because I like the the unique gems of people in the many cases in the gay community that come
Mhm.
and become just like heroes. Like, it's about how not everyone's meant to be a hero, I guess I'm trying to say. And
Sure.
and I'm not saying I'm a superhero or anything, but I think it's heroic to want to tell stories where you're giving somebody a platform that otherwise they wouldn't. I don't know. I
Mhm.
just think I don't have enough, and I'm a jaded old queen, honey. I don't have that much faith in the average human being that lives in the
Yeah.
United States, because there's so many douchebags. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse or not, but
Go right ahead. I don't think douche is gonna get, you know, but it's interesting because my fiance she hates politics. The idea that I talk incessantly about politics and then she goes, "Oh my God, I can't." But
I'm married to that too.
she said something brilliant a while ago, and I still haven't figured out how to get around it. She said, "Listen, the people that," and she, like, politically, she ally, like, sociologically and all those things, she agrees with everything I talk about. She's just like, the other side is better at simplifying it and making it a quick five. She goes, "Joe, how do you make this into a 30-second TikTok?" You need to, the right makes it into a 30-second TikTok by saying things like, "You get all the power, I'm going to reduce your taxes, go and be a great individual." Done. It doesn't mean that. because to actually have that conversation takes way more than 30 seconds. But son of a gun, if they haven't figured out how to simplify a message and how to whittle it down to a soundbite so that people who don't understand politics, who don't understand economic, which by the way is a lot of people, not because they're not intelligent, but because it's horribly confusing.
Yeah,
If they don't understand that, they go to the soundbite, they like the soundbite, they call it a day.
right.
The left can't whittle it down because the left's trying too hard to be honest about the complexities of every single decision.
That is the reason why Democrats are morons for the most part, because
You're gonna get a t-shirt.
I mean, my sister and I cannot say that. I mean, if you think about just the fact that their inability not only to concisely make a point in
Mm-hmm.
15 seconds or less,
Right.
but it's the unnecessary layers that they're trying to explain to what the issue actually is.
Yeah.
The thing is like the case that just happened in Florida with the African American studies. I
Let's
mean,
talk about that. Let's
let's
let's let's describe that real quick. So there's an
how
AP course. Yeah, let's describe it real quick, and then I'm going to let you go off because this is at the crux when we talk about the Holocaust and we talk about the conditions that paved the way to that kind of horrific genocide are the conditions of how do we censor, how do we limit, how do we, and here's a really four-letter word that's not four letters. Well, it is. How do we omit? How do we omit? Not lie, because guess what? Lying doesn't get it done anymore because you can go fact check me on the computer.
you can get
I'm
into
going
Congress from lying, so that's
I am
fine.
going to omit it as even an intelligent line of conversation. So Ron DeSantis has very quickly, without even looking at it, um, blocked an AP African Studies course that is multidisciplinary, that travels. This course incorporates music and literature and history and economics and all of this amazing stuff in order to tell the story, to tell a more full story of African Americans in the United States. He has banned it from the curriculum, calling it, what does he say? It has no academic or intellectual value. It is just CRT, which heaven help me, nobody even understands what those letters mean. It is just CRT. We are banning it altogether. It's not going to be on the face. That's the fundamental issue,
Yeah.
not lies. Sorry, and you
No, no,
can
no,
run
no.
into it, Ron.
It's good to clarify. Omitting that fact from being allowed to be something that's studied, something that people can raise their hand, alternative conversations about young people being brought into that marketplace of ideas is what is the beginning of the potential to not necessarily create slavery again, but to keep them enslaved in a less successful cultural aspect of American life. Because they're
Absolutely
going to minimize the next generation, at least in Florida, because I mean, that's going to be very few states are going to sign on for that. But
right.
it's my biggest word in life is respect. And it's the most disrespectful thing. The omission is out and outright such disrespect to not only the people that were involved with bringing that to the forefront now, whether it's the 1619 Project or whoever, but it's the disrespect to the kids who haven't even been born yet. It's like being born disrespected. It's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And if that gets to go ahead, I think it's actually going to blow up in his face. That's just good. But the feeling is there. The drive for that is there. The hate is still there. And there's, as we talk about the rise in anti-Semitism, see, my whole thing again, my project is not a Holocaust story. It's like blacks and Jews are currently under the eye of the hurricane of white supremacy, and that's
Mm-hmm.
here. It's not going
Mm-hmm.
away fast. It may never, but unless we come together along with the gay community and whatever other marginalized community to understand that power in numbers is strength, not I mean, this whole idea of, and this is why the left is sort of its own worst enemy sometimes, which is why I could say sometimes Democrats are morons,
100%. Yeah.
because they want, everyone is so compartmentalized for their own initial independence, that your independence is just going to end up being the ire. I mean, let's face it, since George Floyd, it's there's more racism as
Mm.
opposed to the other way it should have gone.
Because I think this is the case, and this is the crux of it. And I want to come back to the idea of what's being omitted from education, because the right is really has a lovely little spin on this kind of thing, and this is what I think the left should be driving home, but they're not. I think that the that the way every majority culture has ever run any country or any society in the history of anywhere is divide and conquer. Is we have the power, and instead of them fighting us, because there's way more of them than us, we're going to make them fight each other. So what ends up happening is you have different communities that have been oppressed fighting with each other to see who's going to get that next step up the ladder, not fully understanding because they've been conditioned over generations to say you have to fight for what you need rather than understand, if I have less oppression, it's because you have less oppression. It resonates for me with, and I know that I'm not going to speak to this issue on the whole because I'm not trans, but when I think about the trans argument and I think about all these women talking about keeping trans women from being women, and they're doing, well, what they're doing is they're protecting something they have, it has been fashioned that they have fought for, and they think by giving trans women power and rights and support they're going to diminish their power, which it couldn't be further from the freaking truth. Every minority that takes a step up, everybody takes a step up. Every step closer to justice is a step we all get to take together, even if it's not about your particular community or your particular issue.
No, but the
You know?
media is destroying the power of building that community up because it's drawing a spotlight on it, and that's when the white supremacists feel like
Oh,
they're
it's
getting, it's the media
sure.
is really not helping matters at all.
I think it's funny that the right and the left both hate the media, yet the media is still doing whatever it is they're doing. Who's watching?
Not me.
I don't, you know what I'm saying?
I'll give
Because
it
then
10 minutes tonight.
I also think about the way the right, we have Jordan Peterson up here, heaven help us. You guys have Matt Shapiro, Walsh, you guys have DeSantis. We're going to ship him down to you pretty soon. Don't worry. I think we're going to take away his license card, and I think he's talking about Florida.
Good.
Um,
We can just
exactly.
we should just castrate the United States and
What a
Florida.
what an awful idea. So they're talking about how education is so left leaning and it's all about cancel culture and it's all about this and that. Having said that, nobody on the left is talking about canceling courses. Nobody on the left is saying we shouldn't be teaching this, we shouldn't be teaching that. Everybody on the left is trying to widen the margins. I've heard Jordan Peterson say we shouldn't teach feminism courses, Marxism courses, any of this leftist ideology. They all should be defunded. What? Excuse me? You have Ron DeSantis keeping out AP courses on African American studies. You have all over the United States keeping gender conversations out of the classroom. When what the left is talking about is
Burning
expanding
books and
billions.
librarians becoming the enemy. Like, what are we talking about here? It's
The left
Germany,
is talking about an
1932.
expansion. Yes. It's talking about an expansion. It's talking about a greater breadth of knowledge, a greater breadth of ideology, of critical thought. When somebody says to me, we're not going to teach feminism, I say, which one? Because if you really look at feminism, they're all fighting with each other, and they have been since 1950, which is why we haven't gone anywhere
Right,
significant,
right.
right? You want to get rid of all of it? That doesn't make any sense. We want to be expanding. I want to learn of the 12 different divisions within feminism and try to figure out why so many subsections of a subsection have been created. Whereas the right are the people talking about, we shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't talk about that. Our kids shouldn't learn about that. Education shouldn't be funded that way. When's the last time one of us has banned a book?
I
Please
mean,
tell me.
never. What's not what we do.
The left hasn't even banned Mein Kampf
Right.
because they understand that if we ignore that existed, that disgusting piece of I don't even want to call it literature. If we ignore it, if we don't talk about it, if we don't show how clear it was and this path was created, we will just go back down on that road.
Well,
That's
just
not the left.
remember when that, I think it was Kyrie Irving had reposted that anti Semitic film.
Yes,
It
I
was
never
that
saw.
whole
Yeah,
drama,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then it was available on Amazon. The Jewish
Mhm.
organizations say, don't ban it. That's exactly are not what we don't want done. Two rights
Yes.
don't make a wrong. I mean, I personally am the old school, like, do not turn the other cheek. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like pre-Jesus, honey. I'm like, you smite me, girl, I'm smiting you, bitch, back.
Jesus.
But I have to just say one thing. Coincidentally, there's a guy that I'm following on TikTok named Andrew Seidel who wrote a
Right.
book called "The Founding Myth: Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American," and the Christians are burning this book. He's this guy. I'm going to interview him for
Oh,
my podcast, and then hopefully the next week or so. But it's kind of like in this, like what the left is not talking enough about cohesively in 15-second jibs, like what you're saying for, is how do we destroy Christian nationalism? That's
mhm.
our job.
Yeah.
Destroy Christian nationalism as a movement.
I
Period.
don't. And why aren't we talking about, like, every time somebody talks about cancel culture on the left, every time, or on the right, every time somebody says about how we are the dictatorial, I would simply ask a question: what book have we banned? What course have we defunded? What protest have you're talking about? Hateful language. You're talking about pronouns, Jordan Peterson. You're up here talking where you think critical theory should be defunded from the universities, and you think that is less of an imposition on our freedoms than me telling you what pronoun to use when you talk to me? We
Right.
just need to be making quick comebacks because it's making me freaking insane.
I mean, personally, I don't think we're ever going to win the argument on the pronouns with those people. I just say we need to just say we need to destroy Christian nationalism as an official aspect of religious and political power. Until we can minimize them,
So
they are
hard.
going to be the top story on Fox, which is
Hmm.
and if you look, there was just marches in Washington D.C. pro-life marches like yesterday. I think they were
Yeah.
thousands of young people. I mean, they're definitely growing. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, the left. We have the Gen Z. Yeah, the left's problem is they relax too soon into the war. They think
Yeah.
we won this thing. We don't have to bring out the big artillery because
Yeah.
we're going to win the immediate short conversation war for 1 minute. And I'm
We
telling you,
also
go ahead, go ahead.
we also assume that people we also assume that the way we win that war is through education, and we forget the attacks on education.
Yeah, and by the uneducated.
Yes,
And
we
even
forget
if
that.
they're
That's
the
why we
educated ones, it's the educated ones know that the uneducated ones are going to do whatever they say because uneducated people need somebody to tell them what to do. I mean,
100%.
that's why it's the Christian nationalists. It's the chain of command of the Christian national. We have to cut them off they're the snakes. And how do you get rid of a snake? You have to cut them off at the head. The Jim Jordans, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, they need to
Oh,
be not necessarily unalived, but voted out. I mean, Jim Jordan,
not necessary. Listen,
not
they're
necessarily Literally,
really
I'm
good.
saying.
They're really good. What they're really good at is conflating a beautiful personal faith with what they're doing.
Right.
So everybody who has a faith, and by the way, they're very smart to tap into the Judeo-Christian faith. They're smart about that.
Hmm.
But they'll tap into that faith and they'll say this: the government's coming to take that from you. The government wants to destroy it. These are the people, these are the disgusting people that want to destroy your faith. And all the while, they are using that stance in order to build a totalitarian dictatorship, in order to impart what they want us to act like and be like and all of those things. But it's very hard, and I find this hard all the time. It's very hard to talk about creating a secular society without making people of any religion, to be perfectly honest, feel like I hate their religion, right? It's very hard. It's a tightrope
Right.
to walk that and say, I respect your faith. I respect everything you believe, but no, it doesn't get to be law. It doesn't get to have room. It doesn't get to have a space in the room to impact law. It doesn't.
Again,
And people say, but the majority of people think it should.
right. The
Right?
thing is, you said these despicable people, these disgusting people are making. You're saying that they're saying that these disgusting people want to do this, that, the other thing about us. Who are the
Yeah.
disgusting people, though? The thing is, we
Well,
have to hold a mirror up because they have to see that they're the disgusting ones. That's part of. I'm telling you, it's like if I was a Jew back in 1939 in Russia, in Germany, in wherever, Poland or wherever the country. I mean, I would like to think, just based on now knowing history, like that. What would I have been part of the Warsaw Underground? Yeah, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. I'd like to think so. I'd like to
yeah.
think that what we all have to think like now is
Hmm.
underground. I believe that that is where the power is going to be in our diverse groups of people. We have to think like the underground. We have to think about joining together, finding out where they're. I mean, they're making all these plans and all. I mean, all these kind of. How did January 6th happen without the FBI or the um, any intelligence know where these were plans going all over the country?
Hmm.
There's no way that that came together without hints, and we saw it. And like we need an underground because we are faced with not necessarily the same thing as Germany 1933, but emotionally it's coming from the same place. They want
Hmm.
to be an Aryan race here, the end.
Hmm.
And they're the ones that came here, destroyed the indigenous people and their lifestyle and their beauty and their simplicity and their elegance of who they were, and made you feel like unwelcome in their own home. I mean, please, it's those same people, it's that same philosophy. America, organically, intrinsically, politically, is we don't fund easily things like art and design, and you don't go to the government for that for the most part. All the European countries fund creative projects that way.
Right.
When the Puritans came here, it was all about a simple chair, a simple table. We don't need anything else, just need to pray to God and fuck off. And that's like woven into the DNA of this country, which is why they have felt empowered enough now to be saying things like Ron DeSantis says, like, no, after finally everyone, because of what happened with George Floyd, to understand how intense it must be to be a person of color, knowing that your grandparents were like, ugh, you know what I mean? I know what that feels like but I know what
I
that feels
just saw
like.
posts. I just saw posts yesterday on Twitter talking about he had a heart attack. It had nothing to do with where his knee. Still, they're still denying it. They're still denying it. They're still pretending as though it doesn't happen. It's not a facet of American society. Everybody's making it to be a facet. And there is, when you deny like if you can deny something you visually can see. And let's not forget, African Americans are only 12% of the United States population. 12%.
And Jews
So
are three. So
if
why
we
are
don't
we?
if we don't have a political system that is truly free, like you cannot have, and a lot of people talk about what a democracy is and they have no freaking idea because it's not majority rule. It's majority rule with always the respect and the founding principles of minority rights. It's not majority rule. You do not live in a democracy when you vote for your population to be enslaved. That's not a democracy. The United States wasn't even close to a democracy until 1920, when 50% of its population could finally step up and vote.
Right.
Not even close. Anybody that talks about the United States being a democracy before then doesn't understand what a democracy means. Right? Canada, the same, right? We were in 1918, exact same. So a democracy doesn't mean mob rule. That is the degenerate form. That is the broken form. That's not democracy. Democratic principles state you have a constitution that supports individual freedoms and rights, and then you have an election. But this comes first. And if this doesn't happen first, your election means nothing.
Right. I agree.
Right? Your election. There's lots of elections in a whole bunch of countries that aren't democratic nations. The United States would say that's not a democratic nation. Oh, but they just had an election,
But
right?
we're allowed. But it's almost like everyone's been lulled into just watching them. It's always like watching a bank robbery and not doing anything about it, which is what's happening now with the way the Republican Party is trying to own, not only own the libs, but take control of power, which they know they are losing. It's
Yeah,
almost it's so desperate. That's why their language is so good because they know how to. They're so scared they have to get their message out. They need to be heard. We're like,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and then we have this, and then we have this group, and then we can tra la la, and we've opened up a museum, and we're making rights, and we're making strides, and there's 6 women now in Congress, and no, it's like
Uh-huh.
if the 12% black, the 3% Jews, the probably 1% Asian American, I don't know what percentage indigenous people, like we have to be a unified group
Yep.
of people. It doesn't matter that one wins and one doesn't win. We have to win. We.
Because when you get a right for one group somehow that seemingly applies just for them, it is a win across the board. We need to start understanding
But
that. We
it's not
also need to
being
start
told that it's not being told that way, and that's
exactly
what I think we're missing. We're
every
missing
time
this.
every time I teach the hall, right before I get to the hall, every time I talk about Germany, I spend the longest amount of time talking about Germany's democratic government and how their democracy was the most respected in the world in 1920 whatever,
Right.
because it was considered the template for a democratic structure to exist that would never, their main goal, it will never allow a dictator to take office. People around the world looked at that and copied that. And so when people say it'll never happen, I'm like, dude, Germany wasn't a dictatorship. They had all of this incredible separation of power and democratic principles and this beautiful constitution that when they hit hard times, which is why economic depressions scare the crap out of me, when you hit economic hard times and people can't feed their kids, or people can't heat their house, or whatever, or you create, which is exactly what's going on right now, you create the pretense that that's what's about to happen. You have a lot of very, very scared citizens of that country willing to do anything and blame anyone in order to avoid that reality. And that's what the conservatives are playing on. They're playing on economic devastation. They are playing, and that's, you hear it. When it comes to the environment, what do they say? It's going to cost us everything. When it comes to, healthcare, what does it say? It's going to bankrupt us. When it comes to immigrants, what do they say? It's going to cost us so much money. Their only conversation is about money,
Scaring
and they're
people.
doing it to terrify people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I lost the thought, but I just think
All right.
there is.
I ranted for so long.
It's okay. I think we're both guilty of that in our hearts and in our lives and everything. No, but the thing is, but again, the media, because
Mhm.
how much fear did the media, both sides of the aisle,
Yep.
scare everyone into thinking inflation? Inflation has been coming down. Yes, we had inflation. The world had inflation. But the reality is they keep using the scare of money and inflation, and you're not going to be able. It's the scare. Yeah, it's the media. The one thing I will always agree with Donald Trump about: the media
Oh,
is the enemy. I just
but you know what's funny? I think it's not just the media is the enemy. Okay, so let's ignore for a second, specific media outlets that are just driving candidates. Let's for a quick minute, because this has never changed. The reality of the media is if it bleeds, it leads, right? And that's not just about murder. That's not just
no.
about
I know.
actual, it is about carnage. It is about fear. It is about extremities. That's what we buy into. So, Abe, is it them or is it us?
Well, our hunger for that bullshit is nothing to be proud of
Well,
either.
they make money based on us tuning in, right? So if they're making money based on us tuning in and they know if it bleeds, it leads, they are going to be served economically, which, by the way, is the founding problem of a lot of our issues, economically, by either, exaggerating terrible conditions or by flat out making them up. It doesn't
And
seem to matter because
yeah,
that's what's going to get you to turn into channel 6, whatever.
that is the evolution of our culture, though, because when it was just Huntley Brinkley and just Walter Cronkite, those were not for profit aspects of the corporate structure. It was just the news.
Just the
Goodbye.
news.
Now we've turned it into
Yeah,
entertainment, and it's now infotainment, and CNN and MSNBC and, well, Fox, of course, is all about who's our audience, how do we get the ratings, then how do we get the advertising, and the advertising here, of course, and you said in the beginning, money, of course, is the root of the problem in all of this, right? And
mhm.
the truth is, ad agencies are always the ones that destroy everything beautiful. They destroyed magazines with all these fucking ads. You're going to even get to the point of what you even bought the magazine for. They've destroyed the internet. Was once the internet figured out, oh, I could get like banner ads and whatever, and now all of a sudden, if you look at this, 6 other companies of similar stuff comes up. So they ruined your internet experience. They ruined Instagram and Facebook through advertising, and then allowing negative, like political ads being, which is advertising again, to ruin
Yeah.
the Facebook experience. And then TikTok again, we had that purity of simplicity of mind. It was like people dancing and then talking about how much we hate Republicans. It was like
Pretty
the
good party
perfect
for about
storm.
37 seconds.
It was like, I hate Republicans, and you people are like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
shaking.
yeah. I think it's funny. And it does. It all comes down to, and I don't need a big capitalism versus communism debate or
No,
socialism. Look,
no,
take
no,
all
no.
that. Here's what is fundamentally interesting, and nobody really talks about this. Everybody talks about how money and inflation and this and that, and it's let's never forget, and I wish we could all understand this, that money is a construct. Money's not finite. It's not. You could print as much as you want. We decided how much it has value based on finite things that we can buy with it. Things are finite, resources are finite. Money is a construct. And we are allowing, and this is what kills me about national politics and globalized politics, we are allowing our creation to be our master. That's on us. We've created Frankenstein, right? Well, Dr. Frankenstein created the monster, and now we're like, it's not my problem. Look, it's this individualized entity that controls the world. That inflation is this, and this is doing this. Meanwhile, you really start breaking it down, you see that inflation has nothing even to do with, in a lot of the cases, lack of supply, it has to do with profiteering from crisis.
Yeah.
Everything that was illegal during wartime, we said, oh, go right ahead. We up here, we have a bit of a problem because we have a company called Loblaws. And I feel like Galen Weston he owns Loblaws and subsidiaries, and he also owns Shoppers Drug Mart. So his monopoly is pretty significant outside of Walmart. Okay. And they've looked into, and they've done this for a whole bunch of companies. What is inflation? What is caused by rising cost? And how much more profit did you make this year in profit, not in money? How much more profit did you make this year than last, and the year before, and the year before? And these numbers are 60 to 70% based on higher profits.
Right.
Not That's it. So when somebody takes a picture, have you seen the pictures of the 100-pound beef or whatever? I've never seen that. But anyways, then they're like, look at what inflation's doing. No, 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 no. That's what your grocery store just did.
So
That's
they're
what that did.
milking. So they're milking more profit, but not necessarily higher volume to get it's the same a dollar amount just to milk more profit.
And they're convincing everybody it's COVID and lockdowns and I can't get
No,
the
there's
stuff.
a huge scammeroo on that, honey. It's gross.
Freaking brilliant. It's no different than, it's the value of anything. We can manipulate value by making it scarce, i.e., my favorite is diamonds, right? Is the fact that De Beers, if that diamond company released all the diamonds they have stored, they would be worth less than silver.
Right.
It's a manufactured value.
Right.
It's a and diamonds actually have legitimate value in a tool kind of cut through glass strong mineral kind of way, but on the ring finger, they have this manufactured value that everybody's chasing and paying for. Meanwhile, it's a case of supply and demand, and they're controlling the supply, they're mitigating the supply. There's no genuine, it's like
Well, it's
Supreme
like
clothing.
Marc Jacobs handbag. People they make
The
you think
supply,
that it's amazingly more valuable and get online to get it, and they'll charge $8,000 for a freaking thing that cost them $100 to make
right?
in India. You know what I mean? And but that's the evolution of our culture, because
Hmm.
this whole brand chasing brands idea is like,
Yeah.
until I mean, I was thrown into the brand experience when I went to my before I went to Boston University. I'd
Mhm.
never heard of Gucci. I never heard of any of this, and BU was filled with the biggest bunch of princesses from Long Island, and they're all wearing Gucci this and that, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And now
Right.
look what it's become. I mean, over the past 40, 50 years, that's how long ago I was in fucking college, whatever, you know what I mean? But it's the Kardashianizing of our culture, and that's paved the way. It started with yuppies, which is
I
Trump.
was gonna say it's way before that,
No,
right?
it's Trump yuppies, early 80s, Rudy Giuliani and Trump, where they made the glitz and glamour and the rich and famous, and that all became, Hollywood was always amazing, but nobody was like trying to, Hollywood was so great because it was like you looked at it as it was like a piece of art. Then all of
Yeah.
a sudden it was like, oh, everybody could do it. Reality television, and everyone's, it's like leveling the playing field to access to wealth has bit us in the ass and has brought us to where
There
we
we
are,
go.
which is
It's all about the access to wealth, and that's what keeps that. I do believe that's the fundamental consistency, and we can go back right to 1939 or 1933 to speak about it, because it's access to wealth and access to resources that scares everybody, drives everybody, and you drop a piece of meat in a room with a bunch of hungry dogs, they're going to fight for it.
right.
Rather than figuring out, why didn't you just give them all a piece of meat? And again, I know I'm going to sound socialist when I say that. And I'm not, I'm just saying, can we all admit that there's a fundamental flaw in the way in which we've organized money in this world. When a
Capitalism
brain surgeon
is
gets
not
paid
a perfect.
$400,000 and Tom Cruise gets 30 million a picture, we have a problem,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
No, I mean, capitalism is an imperfect structure, as was serfdom, as was, the regular kings with the wealth, and everybody else is like on the other side of the moat, desperate to eat. I mean, it's proven, even though capitalism made it available for more people, and that was kind of democratic and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the human greed, the greed quotient of individuals that have power, sadly, is never going away. And it's
Ratchets
going to
up.
be in socialist governments too, and communist governments. Look who ran both of those governments. These were the most
Mhm.
corrupt, you know.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, because at the end of the day, and this is what I think capitalism did, especially when it was globalized, is it just pushed poverty outside of my country.
Right.
Well, everybody's doing better in Canada. Well, yeah, but that's because have you seen what's going on in India? Have you seen what's going on in Bangladesh? Have you, right? Well, I don't see it. It's not my, right? And so I get to sit in that kind of privileged position.
Why there's
My
is it much better? I don't know. Is that what's going on in Canada where you have less poverty?
What do you mean? No, I think in Canada you're starting when we talk about what capitalism has done, right? It's created wealth, it's created excess, it's create look at how much Canada has built itself and and all of this, right?
Oh, yeah, it's
Because
growing.
we've shifted the poverty. We don't Canada didn't necessarily have huge, not like the United States, huge levels because we've all for the longest time had a very socialized system.
Right.
But let's not forget what we were based on too. Stealing land from the indigenous people, stealing their businesses, making billions of dollars off of it, right? I mean,
You
we
have
all
as
had our
bad is your homeless problem as bad as America's?
no, I don't think so. But again, I would like to see what it is per capita. It won't be as bad because
You have certain.
two fundamental truths that I swear to God are being chipped away here. Public education that is being gutted left, right, and center, and healthcare. Free, accessible, universal healthcare. These are foundational things that we say this is the basis. Also, subsidized housing. This is the basis that you get. Now, are our taxes more? Of course, because they're paying for that. But don't make any mistake. I believe I love living here, and but what I see in order to make more money, in order to seem more fiscally responsible, which are like two swear words I never want to hear again, they will chip away at the things that cost the most.
Right.
And in provinces, it's education and healthcare. Big, big ticket items. Nobody is talking about what happens when I chip away from. I'll give you one example. And
Military.
this is maybe a soundbite. Again, I'm constantly thinking of sound bites for the left that I can't come up with, and it's driving me crazy. Our OHIP, so our Ontario healthcare, used to cover a genetic testing for a certain kind of cancer. I don't even know what the kind of cancer was. They've defunded it. So you can no longer, if you want that test, you have to pay for it. Here's my question. That test, what is that costing now? What does that cost when somebody gets that cancer and then in a fully funded medical system has to be on cancer treatments and surgeries and hospice care for the rest of their life? Because I promise you, this costs way more than the test. But the government of the day that's only elected for a 5 year, 4 year term wants to save that money now so they look like a superhero. To hell with what happens 10 years down the road.
Yeah. Well, that's usually say sounds like Republicans want her in there. Are they?
But that's why this has to be constituted. There should be things that exist that are fully funded come hell or high water because it doesn't make sense for us to judge it in a 4 year increment. It makes no sense.
Well, you're clearly Canadian to think that way because we can't even think like that. I mean, I'm on Medicare, and that's an amazing thing in America. But you have to become an old goat to get in there. You know what I mean? You have to hope you survive all the other shit to get old enough
Sure.
to get, but um, we're just, it's not a just society currently.
There
It's
you
just
go.
not just, you know.
So I think we have two roads. And this is where you get to sit on whatever side of the aisle you sit on, or whatever. We have two goals. We can either be a just society. We can either have a goal of being a just society and then build an economic system surrounding that, or we can be a society fixated on making money and assume a just society will follow. In my opinion, those are the two. Even though people can't articulate it like that, those are the two roads. One that's saying money will bring everything you need, and the other one says human rights will bring everything you need. Because those are two very different roads.
Well, theoretically, Democrats try to
They
string
try.
that needle together. You know, the
Mhm.
structure of politics is just, you know, the thing as you said earlier, you go, people are always saying I should go into politics, and they say it to me too. But do you want to know why I don't go into politics? Because if you and I were just having a conversation, this amazing conversation, it wouldn't end with, that was great. Thank you very much. It would end with like, can you give me a donation? You know what I
Right.
mean? And then it takes away all the purity of together, honest conversation. And again, I said it on our last chat. I defy Judaism because I am the worst with money. You know what I mean? How I, I've been, I was like the last of the hippies, even though I'm a little younger than the hippies, but I
Right,
watched
right,
the hippies, like I said, like, you know, when the moratorium to when the moratorium to end the war in Vietnam, I was like, I want to be a hippie, but the hippies went on to become freaking boomers
right,
and maybe, and I just never wanted to join the ranks of corporate America, and I haven't. My only job, I've been freelance my whole life producing videos and fashion shows, and I've had a tremendous amount of fun. But um, my only job that I've ever had where I had to clock in and go there and whatever was working for Carrie Fisher. Hello, it was like Alice in Wonderland. You know what I mean? It
imagine.
was like we traveled the world, we worked on film, you know, that was insane. But that was the only job I've ever really had. Everything else has been cobbling together a project here, a project there, and bootstrapping my tits off because that's always like, oh, I gotta pull up them bootstraps again because. But it stops me from becoming one of these people. Like you'll never see me networking at an event. You know what I mean? Anything, the Selena, the this, and the everything that's been part of this project was just the miracle of this thing, the conversation, and one thing led to another. It wasn't like I was schmoozing up. You know what I mean? That to me, and I'll say one other thing about me that I don't think you know about it yet. When my dad died, I inherited his business, which is why I
Mhm.
had to drop out of college and go back and work in like an auto parts business in
Right,
Seacrest,
right.
New Jersey.
That's what my dad did. Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, and it was as though I was like 19 years old, and I was like given the keys to that kingdom. And it was like
Mm,
not the kingdom I wanted to live in. So I did it for 2 years. It drove me into a loony bin. But, you know, my
right.
mother's like, where are you going? What are you going to do? I said, you know what? You guys survived the Holocaust. I don't think I would survive suburbia. You know what I
Mm,
mean? I need to go out on a journey and
mhm.
find life and experience and fall and pick myself up and know that I come from the salt of the earth to survive that. Then I just need to, I'll get through whatever comes my way, which I
Right.
have, which I do, which I will, as long as I'm on earth. And none of that is like me wanting money, money, money. And it's
Mhm.
who I am. And it's, again, do I have a savings account? Nobody wants to kind of think that that's who you are, whatever.
Mine. Yeah. No, it's true, and I mean everybody, you know, wants to be uh, safe. Wants to, you have a home, you have food on the table, you have all of this stuff. It's not that everybody needs that, and that's a basic need.
Right.
But it's about how much do we need to accumulate? How big does that bank account need to be? How much power should I incur, and should I suck out of the system? Right? And at the end of the day, I think, and this is a beautiful lesson, I think, to sort of wrap this conversation up, is the notion that if we follow If we can find our authentic selves, that's a big if, and we can follow that passion and who we are. And if everybody could do that to their own degree, everything would get better tomorrow. Everything. I truly believe that. I believe that everything would get better tomorrow if people learned how to do that, and also started learning that the structures that we pay such homage to are really crumbling, whether we want them to or not. They really are, which is exactly why people can go off on a reality show and make hundreds of millions of dollars. So if all of those things are crumbling, then we really need to start figuring out what inspires us, what makes us proud, what makes us powerful, what leaves an imprint, you know? All the
I
reasons why
also
when people say,
I also
"Yep,
think it's you have to own how am I other.
absolutely.
You know, that is something when because then you're not alone because then everyone
Yeah,
you look at is and then it's finding your you said the word tribe,
connection.
you know?
Yeah,
That's how you pull all that together. And
I
yeah,
think
it's
that's
look, we're all on this journey doing the best we can, but not everyone is. Like
mhm,
that's my point about other people. Like
yeah,
I don't believe that everyone on earth in America, let's just talk about this country, has the ability to have this conversation. Like, I mean, that's
right.
like a basic, simple, you know, that's like a beautiful thing that not everybody wants to have. That it's like that mob mentality that is being cultivated and nurtured into this. And I bring it back to white supremacy. And I'm telling you, my parents did
Fear.
not survive the Holocaust. That I will live in a country that is run by fascists. They are going to rue
Mhm,
the day that they try to pull this off, and we are going to have to pull together and create some kind of underground movement, even if it's just to defend against it. Like we everyone needs to get behind what just happened in Florida. Everybody, I believe there's going to be a lot of rallies and things, and a lot of
I
that, I hope
100%
that
believe that.
is. But when Trump got into the office of the presidency, ugh, and the next day, like millions of people came to defend themselves, and the women's march was gave me hope, and we
Mhm,
need that back. We need that
mhm,
back, and it needs to not be called the women's march. It's the people's march. I mean, we the people are getting shoved into different corners, and we
mhm,
can't let that happen. And I'm telling you, even though it's my own little thing, but this project I'm doing is determined to at least make the statement that we are in this together. We have to fight for this white supremacy. I mean, it's not going to be a political piece, but it's about
mhm.
through music. Oh, my
Social
point is
justice,
music. Look, if you go to a concert, you're not thinking about if the person next to you is Republican, black, or white,
I
or
agree.
indigenous, or whatever.
Yep,
It's like you're
yep.
listening to the music, 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 and art. Music and art. These are the things that you get
Powerful.
outside of yourself for 5 minutes and allow
Yes.
yourself to be entertained and grow. And that's where I feel like we have to be on that track, communicating through visual merchant materials that, okay, I'm just looking at
Inspired.
this and I'm not thinking about the fact that I hate Donald Trump. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's
I
10
agree. I
minutes in the
agree.
theater that you don't do it.
Finding connective empathy, and I think that the way people do that, I think you're absolutely right, is through art. All forms of art is absolutely through art, and I will push it. You will push it. We'll find out how many people will push it. Before we end right now, can you tell everybody listening, watching, where they can find you, where they can listen to you, where your podcast is,
Okay.
the whole bit?
I you can find me on TikTok at Won't Be Silent. You can find me at YouTube/. Won't Be Silent. You can find my Substack at abewon'tbesilent.substack.com. And yeah, I'm going to be putting up a website for this film project called Wolf
Amazing.
Song. That'll be wolfsong.com. It's being built up for next week. And yeah, and when the Won't Be Silent docu-series, when the women's that thing happens, I'll let you know, and you can tell whoever. It's going to be amazing. I just feel that there is that's I've always been committed to through COVID that music is going to be an opportunity for us to tell stories, And there
Absolutely.
are so many amazing stories through music. I did such a deep dive. There was thousands. I mean, I could have 3 episodes just on women. You know what I mean?
Right.
I won't get
Yeah.
that funded, but whatever. You know what I mean? But the
Start
fact
with
is,
the one.
the women at this particular moment in time is so delicious,
Mhm.
delicious, because I felt it
Amazing.
was right. Like I know in my heart when I'm right, don't try to discuss anything else with me. Okay,
Right,
I
right,
can feel it. And I got to say this one last thing. When I was in the meetings with everyone in Hollywood was on this call, but when we were finalizing the deal,
right.
the thing is, what brought me to this project was the fact that my uncle song whatever, right? So by the time we were making deals with the lawyers and the agents, and there was Warner Brothers and Discovery Plus, and my lawyer and their lawyer, production lawyer, and this 10 people on a call, and they're all like, "Yeah, well, we'll have the rights. We'll take the rights in perpetuity, and this is this." And I was like, "Okay, can I just say something?" I said, "We are on this phone call because my uncle was killed in the Holocaust. And that project needs to be somehow woven into this deal. And maybe it's not going to be part of the women's thing because it doesn't make sense, but you need to give me audience on this other project." And they were like,
Nice.
"We didn't realize." You know what I mean? It was like,
Right.
girl, don't.
There it is.
You know what
There
I
it is.
mean?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Abe, thank you so much for talking to
Before
me
you.
today. We talked for a long time. I would love to have you back on. I think we could talk for hours. We can just pick different subjects and go off on a tangent. But I appreciate you. And for our
Kudos,
listeners and our
kudos.
viewers, I will put everything in the bio down below so you can find him in all of his different places and
Right.
see the documentary when it comes out and see the episodes when they come out. But I appreciate you. And for
I
my
adore
listeners,
you. You're the best. And I'm posting and I'll send it to you. I'm posting our
okay.
conversation that I added your video at the end in its
Oh, thank you.
entirety.
Thank you.
If you want to
Fantastic.
put a title on there, did you name it yet?
It's a lot of
You're
pressure, Abe.
the worst.
I'm not very good with. I'll come up with something today. I promise.
I can see if I can add it in there, but for you, but you have I think you have a project that can become something else. But that's me
We
putting
will talk about
undue
that.
pressure on you.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'll just follow you in
I think
whatever
there's
way.
something really fabulous about that pitch I think you could get it funded. I think you could go to the university in Toronto to their film department and say, I want to do a limited series for educational purposes.
Right.
They have cameras, they have editing, they have diddly diddly do. This is the idea. You come up with 3 or 4 other ideas, whether it's an African American, an indigenous
Well,
story.
it's funny. If you go far enough back, Abe, there we did a project last year on Rosa Parks, an art project on Rosa Parks, and last Indigenous Day in Canada, we did this school-wide project on truth and reconciliation. So I would love that idea, and I would love to talk to you about
Yeah, yeah,
off
yeah. Well,
camera.
yeah, yeah.
All of that out. I
I'm
think that's
feeling
beautiful.
it. I'm feeling it like I'm sitting here. And you know I'm
I'm,
always right. Mother
I'm with you.
knows.
I'm with you. And for my listeners, we will see you next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat station. Have a great week, guys. Dismissed.